Hello, class. This is our case study proposal, Foreign Credentials Recognition in Canada, created by Michelle Grant, Peter Gay Lambert, and Chantal Hudon. Here's a detailed description of the problem. Canada has no strategy in place for international credential recognition. Immigrants often arrive in Canada thinking that they can obtain the same career and level as they did in their home country. But this belief is sometimes short-term because for the most part Canada fails to recognize their credentials and skills, resulting them to taking jobs and require lower education and skills than they possessed. As a result, immigrants are pushed into survival jobs in order to take care of their families, or they would need to go through a long, expensive, challenging processing of getting educated, retrained in Canada to gain Canadian certification. Canada is recognized worldwide for its system for recruiting talented immigrants, but it often fails to give them a chance to use their qualifications once they arrive, leading to huge costs for the Canadian economy. The problem is that even though more employers in Canada are getting better at recognizing international credentials, there is a lot more work to be done. But why is recognition so important? According to Shamira Madani, Managing Director at World Education Services Canada and Deputy Executive Director, business needs are changing in accordance with the Canadian labour market, and soon we will need the new Canadians to replace the aging populations of Canada.
Our storyline is about an immigrant couple, Monica and David, who migrated to Canada seeking employment in their field of study. Monica holds a Master's of Nursing degree and she also has 10 years of work experience, while her husband David has an engineering degree, both from their local university in St. Vincent. After moving to Canada, it became very difficult for them to secure jobs in their field of expertise, and this was due to the requirement of Canadian credential and experience. So Monica took the required steps to get her credential recognized and earn Canadian certification. But this didn't guarantee Monica a job. It was still hard for her to find employment. Frustrated and discouraged, they both pursued lower paying jobs. Our team explored the following research. What type of educational problem the team is trying to solve? How do we envision or predict the learning object being used by others? The resources we would need to have available for the development of the learning object. And we also looked at nursing credential in Canada, internationally educated nurses pathway to Canadian credentials, express entry ranking system, foreign credential recognition.
Foreign credentials can be defined as any formal education higher than a high school diploma, including professional or technical qualifications, and any other degree, diploma, or certifications received outside of Canada. Since the mid-1990s, immigrant selection practices have been given more weight to education and skills, while still favoring economic immigrants over family class immigrants and refugees. Canada invites immigrants to upgrade their skills and migrate to Canada to work. Many immigrants respond and then realize that their credentials are not acknowledged as equivalent to Canadian standards. Women immigrant professionals experience more difficulties in continuing with their former careers because their education and credentials are valued much differently than men. This also impacts visible minorities, especially those of older age, and young adult racial minority immigrants.
Questions to consider as you navigate this process. These questions will be used as synthesis and analysis questions in our learning object. Now for the questions. What do immigrants need to know about Canada's workforce? What measures can be taken to better streamline foreign education with Canadian standards? Why are the credentials not recognized? How can immigrants better prepare to acquire the information regarding credential qualifications? What processes are in place to check credentials prior to coming to Canada? How can we close the educational gap? How can Canadians be educated on the benefits of diversity while maintaining their job standards? How can Canada offer Canadian training or higher education abroad as they do with elementary and secondary schools?
Through Bloom's taxonomy, the team was able to create learning objects for the final learning object for the learners. Since the learning object will examine international education in Canada, experiential learning, challenges immigrants face for education and employment in Canada, and qualification assessment. After viewing our learning object, students will be able to identify the key challenges of international education in Canada, explain experiential learning, express the connection with global education and educational learning in Canada, recommend their own solution to a better foreign education strategy in Canada, discuss essential qualification assessment beneficial for immigrants, classify and recognize other professions with minimal international credentials. When creating a learning object, it is important that authentic assessment be recognized and utilized in order for instructors to understand where might be the learning gaps and what the learners are comprehending. Assessments should reveal how well students have learned when we want them to learn, while instructors ensure that they learn it. Formative and summative assessments are both ways to include evaluation method into the learning object. For the sake of this assignment, we will conduct 2 formative assessments and 1 summative that will entail a reflection page. We will include analysis and synthesis questions to our learning object so the learners are able to think critically about problems and solutions. In addition, there will be a fill-in-the-blank exercise, problem sets such as scenarios, and a 1-page reflection that formulates a strategy for the Canadian global education, a stronger program in place for foreign credential education.